Hello and welcome to Osa's Lounge. I hope this is a place you chill, you relax, and connect with me. And you're already doing that on my journey of self discovery. So far, we've been exploring the topics in my blog, and I hope you have gone and read the blog. And if you haven't, this is the perfect time to join me on this journey. It's a storytelling experience, and I hope that either visually or in written form, you are connecting with me. On that note, please like, subscribe, and share this content with your friends and family, and also your colleagues, because they might also benefit from this program. Today, we are continuing the series, and we're speaking about the ego. The ego is under the topic of sliding into the darkness in my blog series, but I've decided to split this into two sections so that we can actually spend time to unpack and to explore the content of the ego, because it's a very serious and important topic. So back to my journey. Last week we spoke about this shadow self and how I came to realize that I had a shadow self which was hidden and undiscovered. Remember, I had to choose between self-destruction, self-deception, and I chose self-deception. The self-deception took me into a very dark place, but this delusion of grandeur, which had totally consumed me, has taken full control of my life. I saw myself as an indispensable person in this world. I was living my best life in the world of investment banking. We recall that from last week. I didn't have any worries. At this point, I was making so much money. I didn't have any worries about money or responsibility. My delusions of grandeur was so large, it totally consumed me. My exaggerated self of well-being and confidence made me feel invincible. I felt totally invincible. I was untouchable. I was soaring to my highest point. I was living my best dream in the corporate world, in this rat race. I was living my best life, chasing my tail. My exaggerated sense of well-being gave me this super confidence. I felt like I was a superhuman. I was this person. I had these delusions of grandeur. I was so large. I had this ego has been blown up to a point where nothing could stop me. I was invincible. I was indispensable. My self-deception led me to believe I was the sole architect of my success. Can you relate to that? Do you ever feel that you're the sole architect? But this is just a delusional place to be, because no one is the sole architect of his success, no matter how hard you worked, no matter how good you performed in university or in college. You can't say that you are the sole architect of your success. You are not the God. You're not the God with a big G. You are a creation of God. But my self-deception led me to believe that I was the sole architect of my success. And in this investment banking world, which I worked at, and I spent 18 to 20-hour days, 16, sometimes even 24 hours, just going home quickly to shower and come back to work. I was deluded because I got additional perks every time. Each additional perk offered by my cold and toxic world was just another glass of the Kool-Aid, which I drank foolishly. All those carrots dangling in my face, the opulent living, the business class trips, the opulent dining, all of that was an additional perk that my cold and toxic world offered me. It was just another glass of the Kool-Aid. Have you heard of the story of the Kool-Aid? Yes, it was just another glass of it, which I drank foolishly. The image I had for this blog was a woman in a glass, and the glass was two-thirds full, and she was holding onto a huge cup of the Kool-Aid. I was drinking it foolishly, thinking that my delusions of grandeur made me believe that I was indispensable, I was invincible. This led me to even deeper illusion of power. And this tickled my ego, which grew rapidly into a huge bubble. The glass that I was two-thirds full, about to swallow me, with my Kool-Aid in my hand, sipping on it, sipping on the delusion of grandeur, the delusion that I was invincible, that life, even if I was not sleeping, even if I was in a very toxic environment, I couldn't see it because I was just chasing power, recognition, influence, and money. The inflated ego made me susceptible to manipulation. Isn't that what the ego does? You have to please everyone. You have this huge ego, which is a big bubble. Any little piercing, it would pop. So this inflated ego made me susceptible to manipulation. The irony lies in the fact the ego is actually the destroyer, because you are in this huge bubble where you don't see clearly and you just focus on yourself and on nourishing your selfish image, and that makes you don't see what the true world is. You don't have the true perception of life, and you are just sucked up in this little cocoon, in this bubble where you are. It's all about you. It's all about building this image. It's all about building this persona. It's all about wearing those masks that disfigure you and make you deluded to who you truly are, who your true image is. Now I was fully intoxicated on this Kool-Aid, and my blown up ego made it easier for others to take advantage of me. It made me predictable. Of course, when you're not open to the true, you don't have foresight or insight into your true nature, what happens? People can take advantage of you because you're just trying to nourish your persona, trying to nourish that story you're telling yourself, the fictional character. And in that, other people would just be manipulative. They will further your deceptive states. They would trick you further. You'll be predictable because, hey, you're living an inauthentic life. You're living a replica of a system. So they know that system very well. They're very close to the system. So they can easily manipulate you. They can easily, and you become very predictable. They take advantage of you. It prevented me from learning from my own mistakes. I couldn't learn because I was just cooked up in my head, trying to portray an image that wasn't a true reflection of myself. I created a defensive wall. I became a victim of my own need to be seen as great. I had to be seen as great. I had to be seen as invincible. I had to be seen as indispensable. And I ended up making decisions that were detrimental to myself. Have you ever made decisions detrimental to yourself because of this defensive wall, this predictable self with this mask that everyone can see through, because the system that you're living in is carved out? It's a replica of systems that everyone in this civilized world order is living out. The invincible self is not invincible. This persona I created, this image, this grandeur, this physique, this human physique that was grand, was just an inevitable bubble waiting to burst. The inevitable bubble burst ensued when the size of my ego grew too large for my constricted narrow world. The bubble burst was inevitable. It had to occur because the size of my ego, this constricted world, but the size of my ego had grown too large to fit into that world. The narrow world, the external world. The other image I had, the wall of my constricted world, was shattering. Of course, it had to shatter because this bubble, my ego was too large to fit into those walls of my constricted world. The walls were too narrow. The hard fact pupil of my human eye was blind to the constricted world in which I was trapped in. My prison walls, as we said last time. It was too narrow. I was caged in it. I couldn't see past it because this self-delusion, this self-deception was consuming me. The majestic form and nervous structure of my human physique deserved more perks, a higher rank, and I was denied all of this with poor disguise. My ego wanted more. My majestic form of my nervous structure wanted more. It wanted more perks. My human physique needed to grow larger. I needed a higher rank, but my corporate world, my investment banking world denied me this with very poor disguise that I had to see through at some point because the poor disguise made it very, very easy for me, even if I was self-deluded or self-deceived, I at some point would inevitably get to the point where I could see through this poor disguise. My puffed up ego took a massive hit due to this poor disguise. I couldn't grow anymore. My bubble couldn't grow anymore. My constricted world was too narrow for it to expand. So my puffed up ego took a massive hit. For the first time, my dream job, which was feeding me this Kool-Aid, I began to see through it because of the poor disguise in which they denied me my higher ranks and my perks, my additional perks. The dangling carrots wasn't dangling anymore. The carrot had disappeared. So I began to see the manipulation and the exploitation. The shock waves through my system unexpectedly began to reveal a small crack in the wall, my constricted wall, which aroused my curiosity. And frantically, I began to knock down the layers upon layers from the thick, heavily insulated wall I was suffocating in. To my horror, complete horror, the toxic and meaningless form of my external world was revealed. Because unfortunately, my ego was so inflated that it had to burst at some point when I was not fed any more of this carrot or given this Kool-Aid to drink. And the poor disguise finally revealed a crack, and I saw I was trapped behind this prison wall that I was suffocating in. With each hidden layer I knocked down, I found heaps and heaps of lies, of gossip, of slander, of malice, of bitterness, of backbiting, and of abuse. I began to see that, oh, this place is actually a toxic environment. It is not good for me. It is only leading me to a very dark hole of self-destruction, which I was trying to avoid by self-deception. This was supposed to be a place of refuge. I had made huge sacrifices. I had built a house here over 10 years, a whole decade. I have built this beautiful house, I thought, but which just happened to be a ruinous wasteland. I felt I truly belonged in this house, in this place of refuge I had built over a 10-year career. But I just came to realize that it was full of lies, of gossip, of malice, of slander, of bitterness, of backbiting, and of abuse. I was utterly crushed to discover these facades of grand invincibility were just really simply walls imprisoning me. I was just another prisoner. Have you felt imprisoned in your environment, in the world you live in? You feel like it is constricted, it is suffocating. You feel like this rat race where you just work and work and work and work and work, chasing power, chasing influence, chasing fame, chasing recognition. Do you feel like, oh wow, it's a vicious cycle which you can't escape from? Instantaneously, I began to feel severe pain. My being was bleeding profusely from deep wounds as I came to the realization. Deep wounds that for a long time, I wasn't aware that were there. It started bleeding profusely, instantaneously, immediately, as soon as these imprisoned walls were revealed to me, the true state of myself, my fictional character that I was living in, this illusion was revealed. I began to feel deep pain and suffering. I was not the synthesized form of perceptions, of thoughts and experiences that I had identified with. And this encounter was confusing and overwhelming. How would you feel if you finally came to the realization that you were just this facade, this image of invincibility, this fearless person that you thought you were, was just a disaster waiting to happen? And this home you have built, this huge place of refuge you thought you had, was full with heaps and heaps, layers and layers in this constricted world of gossip, of slander, of malice, of lies, of backbiting, of bitterness, of abuse. Wouldn't fear grip your heart? Wouldn't you feel confused? My encounter was confusing and totally overwhelming. I felt a grave need for total detachment and disassociation. The wall created by my self-assertive, self-defensive, self-concerned ego separated me from the true nature I had inside. The sense of identity I had created in my mind was completely a fabrication, only a fabrication. That was all it was. And my world began to crumble down rapidly. I was completely lost. There was no more reason to live. Why would I want to live anymore? Yes, the self-deception, when the illusion comes to when you realize it, you feel distraught. You feel like there's no point to live anymore. You think of taking your own life. And this heralded a slippery dip into depression. I fell into a deep hole of depression. Ultimately, the refusal of the call to discover my true inner self was just a more scenic route to self-annihilation. The remains of my extra conspicuous figure was broken, cut in chunks, and scattered abroad. That's how the depressive feeling felt. Depression is a very dark and dangerous place to end up in. And when you feed your ego and you fail to discover your true image, when the bubble bursts, all that is left is remains of that invincible. Once you thought you were invincible, you thought you were indispensable, your extra conspicuous figure, all that is left is brokenness. Cut in chunks, you are in pieces, you are scattered abroad. It's a very disastrous place. You don't have any more reason to live. My shadow self was all that had survived the destruction. And guess what? My shadow self was about to be absorbed in thick darkness. In thick darkness, because depression was at the door. Finally, 10 years later, I had sacrificed, after I have sacrificed all my life, sacrificed my well-being, sacrificed my health to pursue fame, glory, power, money. All that was left of me was thick darkness. I was scattered abroad. I was broken. I was cut in chunks. The place I had thought was my refuge was just thick walls with layers and layers of gossip, of deception, of malice, of backbiting, of lies. It wasn't my home. I thought I belonged there, but I didn't. I belonged where I truly belonged. I had no idea because I was completely lost, completely delusional, or completely delusioned by the fact that chasing this world's desires, this fame and glory, these earthly treasures lead only to self-destruction. So today, I hope you will take some time to consider whether or not your ego is good for you, or it's actually a detrimental, it's only leading to destruction. Is your ego blowing out of proportion? Is your fictional character of yourself only a false representation of who you were meant to be? Because the ego, when it is fed with, and when you're drinking that Kool-Aid of grandeur, of this delusion of grandeur, when you're feeding yourself that you are this person who is invincible, this person who has to work and slave away your whole life, this person who has to chase external gratification, this person who has to accumulate things, earthly possessions, which has no value, but we feel it is all that makes us who we are. That ego eventually is our destroyer. So please today, if I've left you with anything, take my life for example. I ended up in depression, in a very dark place, I lost my voice at some point in this depression. I could barely speak. I was so distraught. But thankfully, there is hope. Your ego, you can still tame it. You can tame the self-desire, this outward desire to look bigger than we are, to look like we are some majestic figure. Curb your ego. Yes, we don't have to completely deaden it because we are human. We still have our physical external body, which has its desires, its earthly desires, but we can curb it. We can narrow it down. We can silence it to a degree and focus on the true essential self inside of us, the divinity inside of us, the divine senses. We can awaken our intuition. We can awaken our higher consciousness. But the ego has to be curbed. The ego has to be put in its place. The ego has to be, we have to suppress those earthly and those worldly desires. I don't want you to get to a place I got to. It was a place where when you don't want to live anymore, when you just want to end your life. You want to just be done with this life because you've been living for a whole decade plus, a life of pain and suffering that I was not aware of. So today, I hope you've enjoyed this content. Like, subscribe, share with your loved ones, and explore, dig deep, dig deeper. Look into that mask you're wearing. Look into that persona that you put up, that front you put up, and that ego which is feeding you lies, and dissect it and shut it up. Shut down that image, shut down that extra conspicuous figure, and hope to discover and desire to discover the true self within, the true self that cannot be shaken by whether or not you are in a place of wealth, a place of power, a place of influence. But what you want to know, what you want to discover is the true being. You want to just be, to be. You want your being to be whole again. You want to step aside from the hustle and the bustle of life. I leave you again with a huge light bulb. Huge light bulb. I leave you with love. lots of love. I leave you with peace. I leave you with joy. I leave you with contentment. I leave you with tranquility. Meditate, be mindful, connect with your true self, level yourself with who you truly are. Don't step above who you are. Don't try to put up a facade. Break through those material, delusional ideas. Pierce through it and see the beauty within. There's so much love within you to share. There's so much to be discovered about yourself, your true image, your true being. You need to be whole. Crave to be whole. Crave to connect with your intuition, to connect with your higher consciousness, to connect with your divinity. Until next time, goodbye.